Hey folks, Kip Adams from the National Deer Association here with Andrea Corman, wildlife biologist with the Pennsylvania Game Commission. Any place you are in Pennsylvania today, hunters are hearing more and more about chronic wasting disease. So Andrea, we're here, we have this deer obviously that you're going to test for CWD. How about start by just explaining to the folks a little bit about what exactly chronic wasting disease is?
Sure, so CWD, chronic wasting disease, is a contagious, always fatal disease. It affects members of the deer family. So in Pennsylvania, that would include deer and elk. Currently, we've only found it in our deer population. It also has a very long incubation period, so it can be anywhere from 18 to 24 months before a deer actually looks sick. And what causes it is a misfolded protein called a prion. So it's not a bacteria, it's not a virus. So there is no cure, there's no vaccine or treatment, there's no immunity either. So it's a very difficult disease.
Now with this, you say it has this long incubation period. Is that why hunters all over don't tend to see sick looking deer laying around even if they're in a disease zone?
Exactly. So it takes that long for a deer to even look sick. So throughout the rest of that 18 to 24 months, they look completely healthy. We've talked to lots of hunters that have harvested positive deer, and every time we ask about the body condition, they say it was a healthy deer, was not behaving abnormally, so you really won't see a deer look sick until those very last few months of disease.
So hunters, spend a lot of time in the woods. They should not expect to see a deer that looks sickly like we see on some of the veterinary websites when they're just all wasted away.
Right.
So, okay, very good. So obviously, the Game Commission is able to test something from deer to be able to find out if the deer has this disease or not, since we can't tell by looking at it. So what do we need to do to be able to pull something from this so that you guys can tell whether or not this individual animal has the disease or not?
So with deer, we test what's called the retropharyngeal lymph nodes. And what we know about CWD is it's a brain disease. So those infectious prions accumulate the most in the central nervous system tissues, the lymph nodes being one of them. And so that's what we need to extract to test for CWD, because currently there is no live test for CWD.
Is that why we see the drop-off bins in the disease areas for hunters to drop their heads off? Is that what the hunters are able to leave you guys?
So that's a very important part of our sampling. It not only gives hunters a little bit of peace of mind to get their deer tested, but it also really helps with our surveillance efforts, helps us understand where CWD is on the landscape and to what extent.
Okay, so is this something that only Game Commission folks can test for, or is it something that the hunters can help you by maybe pulling some samples as well, or how can they fit into this and provide a little assistance?
So we do have those head collection bins throughout our disease management areas. They can submit a head for free testing for CWD. If you don't live near one, you can send it to the lab yourself, although there is a fee. But today what we're going to do is show you how to pull your own sample. There seems to be a need for hunters who might want a European mount and can't submit the whole head, but they still want it tested. And so this will help people if they want to be able to pull their own sample.
So because if they put the antlers in the drop bin, they're not going to get those back, is that correct?
Right, you don't get those back. You can skull cap the deer and just keep the antlers if that's all you want, because the head won't fit down the chute with the antlers anyway. So you can do that, or if you need to keep the whole head, you can try to pull the sample yourself. I will say, if you want a shoulder mount or something that would involve caping the animal, this will ruin it. So I suggest caping it first and then pulling the sample so that you don't ruin your cape.
Okay, but for somebody who's interested, they shot a buck, they want a European mount it, but they still want to help and provide a sample. What you're going to show us here is how they can do that very easily with some pretty simple materials, still be able to keep what they want, and then provide the necessary information to the Game Commission.
Exactly.
That sounds great. Well, do they need a whole bunch of sophisticated tools, or is it pretty simple what they can use?
Pretty easy. So mainly you need your deer. Also some gloves for your own protection. You can use a scalpel. I'm sure most people will be using their hunting knife. You can use tweezers. I have my little fishing forceps that just helps you get a better grip on the tissue. You will put the lymph nodes probably in a little plastic Ziploc bag. We do need your hunting tag as well. So make sure it is filled out. You want to write legibly, otherwise we lose that information if we can't read it. And you'll submit it in the bag with your lymph nodes. And then I also recommend getting just a small plastic container, because if you're submitting this in one of our head bins and other people are dropping whole heads in there, it can get crushed. And so this makes it just a little bit sturdier. So
that's actually a good idea with a license, because if they put all of this in but don't put who the deer belongs to or where they got it, there's no way for you to know where it came from or to get results back to them. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. And there are some people concerned about submitting their head with this, like some processors require you leave the tag with your meat. It's totally fine to put this in with your head. Everybody understands now that we're doing CWD testing, so it's not a big deal to submit this with your head.
And I guess folks could always snap a picture of that with their cell phone as well, so they had record of it if they wanted anyway.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, all right, it looks like pretty simple tools that we need. So what's the next step for reference on here for somebody to be able to find where they need to start cutting?
So first you'll want to put on your gloves. So we'll go ahead and do this. And the easiest positioning for me is to have the head right at the edge of the tailgate so that you can kind of turn it this way and have a little bit more leverage. And you want to find the back of the jawbone here, and you're basically going to cut straight down. Now you can kind of find a little indentation with your finger. There's a lot of cartilage in there to cut through, so if you go back just a little bit, you won't have as much cartilage to have to try to cut. And so that's where we recommend cutting. And then once we get in there, I'll explain a little bit as to, how to find the lymph nodes, what they look like, and how to tell the difference between other tissues.
Okay, so find the back of the jawbone and then slide back just a little bit to get past all that. Okay, that sounds simple enough so far.
Okay, so we're feeling out the jawbones, going back just a little bit, and then we'll start our cut. And you almost want to follow the jawbone kind of down to the center of the ear, and you'll cut the whole way till you hit the spine.
That's a good point of reference and easy to follow then.
Yeah. So, and it helps, you can kind of push it down to open it a little bit more. See, there's some spine in there, so we know we've hit the right spot. And we actually have a nice big one popping out right here. So,
now, are they always that size or
no,
general?
they can be different sizes. They're generally at the 10 and 2 position, coming up.
10 and 2 with 12 o'clock being up here and 6 o'clock the body?
So 12 kind of being at the top and 10 and 2 being up from the spine is what we're looking at. And they are different sizes. Sometimes they're huge, sometimes they're small, and you really have to feel in there for one.
And how many do they have?
There's 2.
Always 2?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and we do suggest that you take both of them because if there's something in the lab where they have to retest, that way they have plenty of tissue that they can test them on. A lot of people will confuse it with the salivary gland, but typically the salivary gland is described as chewed up bubble gum. So if you see something like that, that's not the tissue you want something that's a dense tissue. It'll feel very different to kind of the squishiness of a muscle, and it'll be very smooth and, like I said, kind of bean shaped. So it's gonna look something like this, how it has that kind of chewed up bubblegum looking appearance. That's not what you wanna collect for us. But yeah, once you have these, you just put them in your Ziploc bag with your hunting license. And like I said, you want to use probably a little plastic container to put in the head bin. And you can find the locations for our head bins online, or you can give us a call and we'll direct you to the one closest to you.
Once somebody has gone through this process and put it in there, how long before they should accept or expect to hear something back from you? Is it something that takes a month, or is it quicker than that?
It typically takes a couple of weeks, and it depends on the season because, during rifle we get a lot of samples. But we will send a postcard to everybody who submits a head in a head bin. Once it gets kind of processed and sent to the lab, we'll send you a postcard saying we have received your sample. You can start checking for it in a week or so. You can call us on the CWD hotline. We have a CWD email, or you can go online. We have a results lookup page where you just enter your CID number, date of birth, and it'll tell you the status of your results.
That is great. I know some places it takes longer than that to get back, so that's very helpful for Pennsylvania hunters. Certainly a good thing to be able to do this to help figure out prevalence rate of this disease or rate of spread, but this is also good from the hunter end to know whether or not his or her deer has the disease, correct?
Yes, yeah, we do find that people, have a little peace of mind if they get their deer tested and get the results before they consume it. And it does help us keep track of that prevalence, but also helps us find it early and take some actions to prevent it from becoming established in those new areas.
That sounds great. Certainly good for hunters. That can help them individually, can help the Game Commission, and help them do their part to ensure the safety of our wild deer herd.
Absolutely. And the last thing you want to do is clean your equipment and tools that you used as well. So the standard procedure is using a 40% bleach solution. So 2 parts bleach, 3 parts water, soak your tools for 5 minutes, and use the same, hose out your truck bed and everything like that. So just to make sure you've got everything all cleaned up.
Very good. Well, obviously you are a professional at this. That seemed very simple. It's nice that there's easy reference points on here for hunters to find, and they can now understand, the benefit of this to them and to our deer herd. So one last time for hunters, where do they go to get this information if they want to check something with the Game Commission?
So you can call us on our hotline. It's 1-833-INFO-CWD. We also have the email, which is infocwd@pa.gov. Or you can go to our Game Commission website. It'll have all the locations of the head bins, and this video will be posted on there as well.
Very good. Well, thank you, Andrew. I certainly appreciate it. And on behalf of Pennsylvania hunters, thank you for everything you and your staff do to safeguard a future deer resource.
Thank you.